My name is Mara Bennett. I'm 34 years old. And by the time my sister raised her plastic wine glass at our family picnic, I already knew she had been waiting all afternoon to embarrass me. Burgers were still smoking on the grill, kids were running in wet grass, my family was arranged around folding tables by the lake, pretending we were the kind of people who only gathered for laughter. Then my sister stood, tapped her cup with a fork, and smiled in that bright, polished way that always looks sweet from a distance and cruel up close. Here's to the one who always shows up broke, needy, and still hoping to matter. My mother laughed first. My father looked down and smiled into his plate. A couple of cousins followed because that is what weak people do when cruelty wears a confident face. I picked up my drink, stood slowly, and looked straight at her. Then, let's raise one to the desperate one who borrows from the person she mocks, lies about it in front of family, and still expects applause. The whole yard went still. Her smile dropped. My father finally looked up. My mother went pale, and my sister, for the first time in her life, looked scared instead of superior. Before I tell you what happened after I stopped protecting everybody's lies, tell me what time it is for you right now and where you're watching from. I'm curious to see how far this story travels. My name is Mara Bennett. I'm 34 years old. I restore damaged documents for the State Museum during the day. At night, I work at a frame shop to keep my own life stable. I spend my days preserving evidence, which means I stopped treating memory like truth a long time ago. I keep records instead. Vanessa recovered fast because that was one of her favorite talents. She could fall on her face in public and still make it look like the floor had offended her. She gave a short laugh, touched the rim of her sunglasses, and said, "Wow, Mara, so we're doing this at a family picnic." The tone was soft, but the message was clear. I was the problem for answering, not her for starting. That had been the family pattern for years. She cut, I bled, and then everyone asked why I was making such a mess. "You started it," I said. Don't act shocked because I finally answered. My mother, Carol, leaned forward with that breathy voice she used whenever she wanted to smooth things over without actually correcting anyone. "Girls, not here, not now, not in front of people." That was always the rule when Vanessa crossed a line. The problem was never the wound. The problem was always that somebody might see it. Vanessa shrugged. "I was making a joke. You always turn everything into a drama because you're insecure." I set my cup down on the table before I crushed it in my hand. "A joke? You borrowed $3,000 from me in February because your commission check was delayed. You borrowed $900 in April for your car. You borrowed again in June because the rent on your downtown apartment was due and you didn't want your fiancé to know you were behind. Which part was the joke?" Her face changed at the edges first. She had trained her mouth better than her eyes. The smile stayed up for one more second, but the panic had already surfaced. "You didn't have to say numbers," she snapped. "Exactly. You didn't have to toast me like I was your family charity case." A low murmur spread down the tables. My uncle stopped turning the corn on the grill. Jenna, my friend from work, stood near the cooler with a paper plate in her hand and looked at me like she had just understood 3 years of conversations I had never fully explained. Vanessa crossed her arms. "So now you want a medal because you helped your sister a few times?" "No. I wanted basic respect. That would have cost you less." Even my father, Richard, shifted in his chair. He had spent years mistaking my silence for resilience. Because I handled things, he assumed I needed nothing. Because Vanessa complained loudly, he assumed she needed more. That is how some families divide love. Not by fairness, but by who creates the most noise. Vanessa stepped closer. "Tell them how you act like you're better than everybody because you have your sad little jobs and your saving spreadsheets and your thrift store clothes." I laughed once, because that was almost impressive. She had taken her dependence on me and translated it into my arrogance. "I restore damaged documents for the State Museum all day," I said. "Then I spend nights at a frame shop so I can keep my own life stable. I don't drink my paycheck. I don't lease luxury I can't afford. I don't insult people who cover for me." A hush moved across the yard again, but this one felt different. Not empty, heavy. The kind that arrives when the room realizes it has been listening to the wrong person for years. My mother tried first. "Mara, sweetheart, enough." My father cleared his throat. This doesn't need to become a spectacle. I turned to him. Then why was everybody comfortable when I was the spectacle 5 minutes ago? He had no answer. He looked toward the lake, as if sunlight on the water might offer an escape route. Vanessa saw the hesitation and got reckless. After everything this family has done for you, you stand here acting like a victim. What exactly has this family done for me, Vanessa? Say it clearly. She opened her mouth, then closed it. She was good at tone, implication, insult, performance. She was much weaker with facts. I reached into my tote bag and pulled out a small accordion folder. Some people journal for healing. I keep records. When you spend your days preserving evidence, you stop treating memory like truth just because it sounds emotional. Mara, don't, my mother said sharply, seeing the folder. Today we do this properly. I opened the folder and placed several copies of bank transfers, printed texts, and one handwritten note Vanessa had left in my mailbox asking me not to tell anyone she was short on rent again. I did not wave them dramatically. I did not shout. That would have let everyone dismiss me as emotional. I simply placed the papers on the table beside the potato salad like receipts arriving for a meal nobody wanted to pay for. February 12th, $3,000. Memo line, temporary. Don't tell mom and dad. April 4th, $920 for your car repair. June 21st, $1,521, $1,500 because Liam thought you had already covered your half of rent. August 2nd, $800 for the destination bachelorette trip you swore you couldn't back out of because appearances mattered. Vanessa went white, not embarrassed. White. One of my cousins whispered, "Oh my God," loud enough for half the table to hear. Aunt Diane stopped talking. My father stared at the papers like they were written in a language he had hoped never to learn. You kept receipts? Vanessa asked. Of course I did. You taught me too. That was the first truly honest sentence of the evening. I had not started my 20s suspicious. I became suspicious after too many stories changed when she retold them to other people. After too many favors became proof that she was generous because she allowed me the help. After too many humiliations came dressed as jokes. Jenna quietly moved from the cooler to stand near me. She did not touch me or interrupt. She just stood there, which was somehow more powerful than all the speeches people could have made. Vanessa looked at our parents again. Are you really gonna let her do this? My father rubbed a hand over his jaw. Did you borrow this money? She hesitated. That was all the answer anybody needed. That's private, she said finally. It was private when I was protecting you. You made it public when you used me for a punchline. She took a step toward the papers and I put my hand over them. Don't. You've been rewriting me for years. You don't get to rewrite documents too. A few relatives looked down, ashamed. Some people will watch injustice for a decade and still think the real offense is when the victim becomes articulate. But enough of them shifted that I could feel the balance changing. Vanessa sensed it too. That was why her next move was so ugly. Maybe if you weren't bitter about ending up alone, you wouldn't be this obsessed with money. That line was deliberate. She knew exactly where to aim. I had ended an engagement 2 years earlier after discovering my fiancé had quietly opened a credit card in both our names and expected me to absorb the debt. My sister knew how painful that season had been. She used it anyway, right there between the paper plates and lemonade. That's fine, I said. Keep talking. Her chin lifted, mistaking calm for weakness. Tell them how miserable you are. Tell them why you can't stand seeing other people happy. Happy, I repeated. Vanessa, you aren't happy. You're expensive. My uncle coughed into his fist to hide a laugh. One cousin failed to hide it at all. Vanessa heard that and humiliation finally broke through her polish. You jealous, bitter little... Finish that sentence, I said, and I'll read the text where you called me crying from the grocery store because your card declined and you said, please answer. You're the only one who ever fixes this. She stopped. For the first time in my adult life, my sister had reached the edge of what performance could save. Vanessa's fiancé, Liam, who had been helping with the grill and avoiding the center of the drama, finally walked over. Wait, he said slowly. You told me your bonus covered the back rent. Vanessa turned toward him fast. This is not the time. It seems like exactly the time, he said. That changed the shape of everything. Until then, Vanessa had still been fighting me from high ground. Now, somebody from her own carefully managed life had discovered he had been standing on cardboard scenery. "You lied to me," he asked. "Don't do this here," she hissed. "You lied to everyone," I said, "and every time I stayed quiet, you used my silence to build a better version of yourself." She pointed at me. "You love this. You love making me look bad. You did the looking bad part yourself. I just stopped editing." My father stood up from his chair. He looked older than I had ever seen him, tired in the way people look when they realize their comfort has been financed by someone else's restraint. "Vanessa," he said, "is the number real?" She hesitated again. "It's not that simple." "That means yes," I said. My aunt tried once more to rescue the mood. "Families help each other." I looked right at her. "Families don't mock the person helping them and call it a toast." Liam stepped back from Vanessa as if he physically needed distance to think. He handed the grilling tongs to my father, said he was taking a walk, and did not come back for nearly 40 minutes. I gathered the papers back into a neat stack. "Here's what happens now. From today forward, I am done covering your rent, your bills, your emergencies, your image, and your lies." Vanessa gave a short, disbelieving laugh. "You're being dramatic." "I'm being exact." I held up one sheet. "Total, unpaid amount, including the money you promised to return last summer, $7,280. My mother made a soft sound under her breath. My father looked at Vanessa with the kind of stunned disappointment I had never seen directed at her before. "I was going to pay it back," she said. "When? After the next brunch? After the next spray tan? After the next lease renewal on an apartment you can't afford?" Then I looked at my parents. "Before either of you asks me to be the bigger person, don't. I have been the bigger person so long, you all mistook it for my permanent shape." Nobody spoke. The breeze off the lake moved the edges of the tablecloth. A paper napkin lifted and fell. People started leaving early after that. A picnic built on appearances cannot survive the truth for very long. Vanessa tried twice to corner people into sympathy. First my aunt, then Liam. Neither conversation lasted long. Aunt Diane, who had spent years praising Vanessa's taste and charm, finally said the one useful thing I had ever heard from her. "I can't defend you tonight." Liam did not yell. He looked worse than angry men look. He looked embarrassed to have been made into an audience member in his own relationship. Later, my parents waited for me near the patio. My father leaned forward with his forearms on his knees. "How long has this been going on, the borrowing?" "About 4 years. The insults, longer. The expectation that I'll absorb whatever she creates, most of my adult life." My mother's eyes filled. "Why didn't you tell us?" "I did. Just not in ways you respected. Every time I said I was tired, every time I said her comments were cruel, I got told she was stressed or sensitive or didn't mean it. You two didn't hear me because the role you gave me was useful." My mother said quietly, "We thought Vanessa needed more support. She's always been harder. That is not the compliment you think it is. All it means is you taught her that difficulty gets rewarded." My father shut his eyes for a moment. "We managed you by giving you less." Neither of them denied it. My mother looked up. "We were proud of you. You were steady, capable. You never seemed like you needed rescuing." I didn't need rescuing. I needed fairness. I needed somebody to notice that being dependable is not the same thing as being unaffected. My father exhaled slowly. "Vanessa will repay you. Every dollar. And if she needs to change her lifestyle, then she changes it." My mother added, "No more rescuing." Then she said something I had not expected. "I think we made a habit of admiring Vanessa's shine and relying on your structure." I looked at her. "That is the most honest sentence you've said all year." My father said quietly, "Structure doesn't sparkle. So we took it for granted." Vanessa came back outside 20 minutes later with her mascara smudged and her anger rearranged into wounded pride. Liam stood a little apart, as though proximity had become a decision instead of a habit. My father said, "Sit down." She sat. No performance, no dramatic sigh. My mother spoke first. "You owe Mara an apology." Vanessa looked at me. "So that's what this is? A tribunal?" "No," I said. "It's the first normal conversation this family has had about your behavior in years." My father interrupted her, which he almost never did. "It was not a joke. It was mean. And you knew exactly what you were doing, my mother added. The money is not a misunderstanding, it's debt. Liam asked quietly. Did you tell Mara I covered the rent? She said nothing. Did you tell your parents she was the one always asking for help? Yes, she muttered. My father said, you will repay Mara every dollar. Liam stood up. I'm going home. Vanessa stared at him. I don't know which part is worse, the debt, the lying, or the way you publicly tore down the person who covered for you. He looked at my parents. I'm sorry this happened here. Then he looked at me, and I'm sorry I believed it. He left without slamming anything, which somehow made it more final. My father gestured to the chair again. Vanessa sat. When she finally spoke, her voice was lower, less polished. I'm sorry I used you. I'm sorry I kept taking your help and then acting like you were beneath me. I'm sorry I lied to Liam. For a long time I thought the two things, love and protection, existed in separate categories. That love was soft and open, and that anything with structure and documentation and legal backing was something colder, something less. Standing at that picnic with receipts on a folding table, I understood something different. Being small wasn't humility, it was survival. Endurance is not just neglected love wearing sturdy shoes. The family you're born into is not always the family you keep, and knowing the difference is not cruelty. It is clarity. I am done covering your rent, your bills, your emergencies, your image, and your lies. That sentence is not the end of a relationship. It is the beginning of one that has honest terms. If you've ever been the person in your family who handled everything and got mocked for it anyway, drop a comment. You are not alone, and you are not wrong for finally answering.